Welcome to this webinar called StartupTalks, Why Do Startups Fail by Pär Lagerström. My name is Lina Helgason. I am community manager at LEAD. And I will start off by telling you a bit about LEAD, who we are and what we do for those of you who don't know us already. And then I will invite Pär Lagerström to the virtual stage to talk about his journey and his experiences and to guide you through the most common mistakes that he sees startups make and how to dodge them. So now a bit about LEAD. LEAD is a business incubator. And then you might wonder, well, what is a business incubator? Well, as a business incubator, we help companies grow faster and safer. So basically accelerating the development of startups with high growth potential to become scalable growth companies. And now, how do we do that? Well, we provide idea owners and entrepreneurs a wide range of directed resources and services, such as business coaching, network and business contacts, support to attract financing, and much, much more. And we have 2 offices and are situated in 2 cities in Östergötland, one in Linköping and one office in Norrköping. And we're currently working with around 45 companies distributed over the 2 locations. And they're both from industry and research. And we've been doing this for almost 20 years, and we have evaluated around 1,000 companies or projects, and we've coached around 170 startups in total. And we organize these startup talks once per month, where we invite inspiring and exciting entrepreneurs to share their stories and experiences, and hopefully to inspire some of you. And now I will take the opportunity to say to the audience that please feel free to write any questions that might occur during the talk in the Q&A function at the bottom. And I will try to raise them during the talk as we go along or after the talk. And I think it's nice to get some interaction from the audience too, and I'm sure Pär agrees with that. So please feel free to write any questions. So now, today we have the honor of having Pär Lagerström here with us. And Pär is an inspiring leader in both the SaaS and sports industry, and with over 15 years of experience in the SaaS industry and now in his role as an investment manager at Almi Invest, he knows what it takes for a startup to succeed. And Pär was sales manager at Mynewsdesk during their fastest growing period. And he was responsible for building up the sales department in both Sweden and abroad when the company grew from 10 million Swedish crowns to 100 million in revenue. And he has, apart from being the national team coach at the Swedish Football Association, also worked as CEO, business development manager, and been involved in various companies as board member or chairman. So welcome, Pär. I'm so glad to have you here.
Thank you very much, Lina, for that presentation. It seems a lot, but I'm a very, very ordinary man. So.
All right. So let's dig more into who is Pär Lagerström. Tell us a bit about you and your background.
You give a pretty long background there, but as you said, I think what maybe a bit different with me from maybe other investment manager, or if you compare it to business leaders, that I have this combined roles. I had those roles for many years. That also I'm both a football coach and I have been a CEO for companies. I think that's something that pretty much myself. I learn from a lot from businesses and startups and everything, and I take those ideas into the sports business, and then I learn a lot from sports with passion and energy, and I bring that things into building startups. So I think that's a lot about me, and it's pretty much the same. I have 2 children and a family, and enjoy being in both those 2 segments. So even though I'm not a football coach anymore, I'm focused on investments now at an investment manager. I'm still using those metaphors, so you might hear a bit of those today.
Nice. So now you've been investment manager at Almi Invest since October last year, right?
Exactly.
And can you tell us a bit more for those in the audience that might not know Almi Invest and what you do? Please tell us a bit about Almi Invest.
Absolutely. Almi Invest is Sweden's most active startup investor. We're a venture capital company investing in like 8 different regions in Sweden, and would really like to invest in early stage and maybe combine before the bigger VC companies, the bigger venture companies comes, or together with private investor or like angels, so that we can maybe give the startups a bit more capital than just a couple of 100,000, and so we can invest together. So we invest in very, very early stage, and even though that we are very active, I can say that directly that we just invest maybe in 1 or 10 companies. So it's even though we really like to invest a lot, it's very, very difficult to have investment as a startup. So if you have had no for some time, don't give up. Just continue and looking for new options.
Nice. And Lead is actually, we have a network working with Almi Invest. They share knowledge, and I mean our task is also getting our company's investment ready. So it's very relevant for our companies too, of course. But tell us a bit about your role at Almi Invest. What do you do as an investment manager?
I think we are now over 40 investment managers all over Sweden, and that's also Almi's job to not just invest like in, of course, the Stockholm or Malmö or Gothenburg, but the big cities is most companies. But I think it's extremely important for our children, everyone, that startups pops up all over the country. So these 40 people we are spread all over Sweden. So we like to dig on the stones and find companies and startups in every city more or less. And what we do is just the first thing, as you said, is just to find startups, to meet startups, and of course help them if it's something with our knowledge to do's and don'ts. Maybe we'll talk about that today. And then we will try to understand if they are ready for investment. That's more or less the first step. And then we do the first investment process that we try to invest. And that's a lot of like maybe finding other people to invest in, doing the due diligence and so on. And then when we have invested in a company, we like to help the company work together with scaling the company. That's a very important part. So often we take a very active role. We're part of the board member, but we're also doing this as a living. So a lot of companies can call Almi Invest when we might attend to a strategy day and something like that, just to help the startups with experience from ourselves, but maybe also for other portfolio companies. I think that's very useful that you can help each other in this world. And that's seeing that in the startup environment, that people helps out. Then, of course, we are an investor, and to succeed with that, we also need to do exit. So that's also a big part of the roles. When the company is ready to either like take the next step, and with maybe Almi Invest thinks that now someone else need to step in, or the company is sold, or maybe do an IPO, then we help out with that and we sell the company. And the money that we hopefully bring in is money that will invest in new startups. So that's the whole ecosystem.
Yeah, nice. And I mean, based on your background and now as the investment manager at Almi Invest, I'm sure that you are very skilled in seeing growth potential in startups and see what's promising or what to avoid. And I'm thinking, let's dig a bit more into that. What exactly do you look for in a startup? What are the success factors that you would like to see in a startup?
That could also be a whole seminar just on success factors, but we will turn it around. But of course, we, as Almi Invest, we are looking in some uniqueness. That's something that could different this business idea from another. I think that's an idea is one thing, but if it's unique, if it's research, or is it do you have some IPs that could like protect them from competition? That's very, very important, of course. So that's the idea itself. That's unique. But another ones, we invest in people. We invest in the team and the entrepreneur. And if they're more than one, we are very happy about that, because we think it's difficult we will discuss that later, but it's very, very difficult to succeed with the startups. Mm-hmm. So if it's 2 good people, 3 good founders, that's a stronger case. So that's something what we look for. So that's another success factor. Other things, of course, is also like what's the timing and the trend in the market? What kind of solution is the market and the environment that we're living in, what's trending at the moment. That will of course succeed often better than something else. So, but very much the uniqueness, the team, and actually we're also looking, if we will invest, we will like invest with other great investors, because we also think that's a long-term thing. It's not a quick fix that you put in some money and then hope you get like 10 times back. It doesn't work like that.
Yeah. So now, like you said, these are the success factors in this talk. We will focus on, what makes startups fail. So, let's twist, instead of looking at what you do want to see, what don't you want to see in a startup? Because the fact is that most startups actually fail. And according to you, what are the typical factors that make startups fail?
I think it's a very, very interesting subject. I think you can, first I thought about, should we discuss failure, but I actually think you can learn a lot. So I think it's a great subject. And first of all, I think before we can even go into why they fail, I think you need to understand about how difficult it is. As you said, a lot of research and surveys has shown that more or less 90% of the startups fail. And sometimes 20% the first year. Is a lot of studies there, and if you want to, like, today I will explain my own experience and some metaphorics around that. It's great books about why they fail. It's great research. This will not be a research for me. It's about my experience and my colleagues' experience. But if you have that in mind when you're starting a startup, if you're thinking about that, yeah, it might fail. It's very, very difficult. I think would be very, very useful for entrepreneur. And if you go back to describe it together with like the elite sports, for me, it's pretty obvious that people understand that it's very, very difficult to be the best in the world in the football. It's very, very, very difficult to win a world championship in athletics. And people, but they're still starting to train for that. They're having dreams to doing that, and they work for that for years, even though they don't be best in the world. And I think that's very, very important for startups as well. If you think it's just success and that's the only thing that's worth, then it will be tough. So I think number one, the biggest mistake is not to understand how tough it actually is. And it's you're changing the world. You're creating something that's not out there on the market, and you are try to sell it to the first customer, and then you should scale. That's for me, it's fantastic, but it's also very, very, very difficult.
True. And what other factors?
I mean, if that's like more or less the basis, I think we can. I thought about that before the seminar. If I can relate to a couple of things and subjects, and one subject, of course, is the market need. If you're creating a product or a solution or something, it must find a need out there. Someone needs to know. You need to have a product or a solution and need to solve a problem, and that's of course very important. And a lot of ideas might do that on a paper or on an idea when you're doing that, but you also need to make sure that the clients feel the same way as your PDF might do or your pitch deck might do, and that's of course extremely important. So the need of the market, but I also seen actual product that has that solve the problem. That there is a lot of need out there, but you don't have the competence to explain that. So that's also, if even though you need to find the market need, you also need to be able to present and actually market or sell your product to the market. That's also to creating need. Of course, the idea need to be good enough, but you as a company or entrepreneur need also be good enough to actually present that and make the customers understand the potential need or potential solution. I think that's you can discuss that a lot, but it's extremely important.
Yeah, we at Lead have this, our startup guru, Steve Blanks, who keeps saying, get out of the building. And this is exactly what you're talking about. Get out and understand what the customers need, what's, a need and not just a nice to have. And also, like you said, understanding the product and let the customer use it, I assume is, that it's.
If they use it, it's perfect. If they buy for it, is even better. But also, if you have understand that the need is actually very, 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 very obvious. You solve a clear problem. That is a great timing. Once again, sometimes people quit anyways, or they don't see it. But I can see that the failure you're doing then is you might not be able to present it. You might not be able to market it or even sell. So because sometimes entrepreneurial thing is just about innovation, is creative, and I think you can be entrepreneur and you can't find like an exact person. You do it in the way that suits you, and you do it with the solution that you have. But if you maybe not that people that not maybe that like selling, you need to find someone else to sell it, or you need to sell with your passion, or you need to sell with demonstration, or you need to sell with metaphoric stuff. You need to find ways to present the need as well, not just creating the need. And that, because that will go from maybe something that you have that's nice to have, that actually with a skill set or presentation skills or marketing and sales could be must have, because people buy people first.
Yeah, that's true. Let's move on to another factor. I know you talk a lot about the team and the importance of building a team. Can you please tell us a bit about that, if that's an important factor?
Yeah, it's a success factor, but it's also the a very, very common, like, big risk for failure, not the right team in place. And it's so much things. But first of all, as I said, if you're starting a startup, you might do it, I think, number one, thinking team. Could you have a co-founder? Could you have 2 or even 3? That's important, because if you're more than one, you get help, you can work together, you can do different things, you will be able to maybe come a longer way before you would like to have investment. So just having the team thought in your head. But it's not about just go out there and get a co-founder, because then you need to think about who will that be. This will be a person that you will spend so much time with, that maybe more than with your family. So you need to analyze it like that. So go out dating, go out, maybe try to do something that's really tough. Like if you in the sports world, you do sometimes to do team building, because when you're hungry or tired, then you see something else about people. Maybe you should do that with the co-founder. So you're having those arguments, and you can understand that we can still work together. I think that's when you're thinking that, you don't need to. It's not your partner. You don't need to be in love. You don't need to love everything. You should work together, and you should accept that you are different, because that's the way you will be. So that's a team thought, which I think is really important. But the team thought is also wider, but not the right team in place. There could be also, what's your first employee? What kind of person is that? Can you find the right person and or the right competence that you're missing? That's crucial, because still, even though it's an idea, there is people that can present ideas, that can like things happen. How good are you to execute things? If you don't have it in the founder team, can you find that person? But the team thought should be around the whole startups. Also have a thought about that when it's time to take in investors. What kind of investors are investing in? What kind of person do you would like to have in your board, and so on. So it's a very, very big risk, actually, and that startups fail, that you don't have the right team in place. It's about conflicts. It's about people that don't get along, and if they don't get along, they don't work together. They will not execute things. And then you can't take one idea from an idea to something big. So a lot of cooperation. The team thought is extremely important.
Yeah, and I know you also mentioned previously that to look at the personality and the passion, because skills and you can train those things, the competencies, but the passion and the personality needs to be there and work from the beginning when you create a team.
Exactly, because that is way also to building a team. Because when you try to hire people, okay, of course you can I'll need to hire the right people and so on, and you might do the advert, and you do interviews and so on. But the thing is that the real journey starts when you have had that person on board, or a couple of persons on board. If you are an entrepreneur with your idea, I will say to people, I'm a bit afraid of hiring people, but don't do that, because you have so important role, but you need to show the ones that get on board that are not founders. They're not that you need to give them the same passion. You need to explain why you're building this company, what's the idea behind it, and every day go back to that. And I would like to change the world. This is I'm living my dream with my startups. That's something you need to work with your team to have the same feelings, because if you can have that in the whole team, then you get a lot of effect on doing all those, as I said, very, very tough things that you will go through.
Yeah, and that's true. You go in with all your heart in the beginning especially in the beginning, you need to work a lot in a startup, and then it's crucial that everyone is really passionate about it in order to make a good job. So I'm thinking let's move a bit towards like the leadership part of it. Is there anything you have to say there, like in terms of you see startups failing based on the leadership or lacking?
Exactly. That it's a very important thing, because when you succeeded with finding a need, and maybe you have a co-founder or some employees, when you're going from maybe a startup, not start to scale the company, then it's about execution. It's so much. You need to take this idea from you're having nothing, you have no turnover, you have maybe one customer. You need to go from 1 to 100. You need to go to 0 to 10 million, from 10 million to 100 million, and to doing that is about execution. And when you're starting a company, you also start. Maybe you have a head of product or the entrepreneur itself, but then when you grow in the company, I think you need to have leadership, because an idea is never ready. You need to have leadership to actually take decisions, and that's what I see a lot of mistakes. You don't taking enough decisions. You're a bit afraid of failure. So maybe could we do this? Could we do? Just take a decision, and that's what I mean with leadership. And if the decision is wrong, you will learn that very, very quick. Then you take a new decision. So for me, like poor leadership or lack of leadership is a big risk of failure in a startup. Because for me, leadership is taking decisions, is to understand and learning from those decisions, understand when it's time to do risky things, because it's risky to start a startup, of course. Then you need to be smart, but in some occasions over the time, it's like now the time is right. Now I have the right people on board. Now I need to take risks again. And that's for me leadership, to evaluate that and understand that. So that's something you might not think about. You might think that I just need a CEO when we are around 100 million SEK, but you don't need to have a CEO, but you need to have leadership in your organization to execute on things, because that's also what we are looking for as an investor, to see things happen all the time.
And how do you, well, that's a hard question, I guess, but how do you know when you should take those risks, or when the timing is right? Is it a feeling, or is it, how do you do that?
I think if you have the role that the leadership is to like give away responsibility and take decisions. Even though if you're a CEO in all like leadership roles, that's like the first sentence, like you should give people responsibility and then you take decision. And you might not have the opportunity to have like a full-time manager or a leader, but someone need to lead in each department and have that role. And that's how you find this out, that okay, this is my role. If we are 3 founders or 3 employees, who's the role to taking decisions about risk, about growing a company, about changing that? So I think you just sit down on a paper and just, because that's how the startup is. You don't have exclusively positions for everything. Everyone needs to do everything, but you need to decide who is responsible for that, because sometimes you forget about it. You forget about leadership. You have product, you have someone that's do financials, you have developers, you have sales, but who is actually making the right decisions? So I think to give responsibility and actually think about that in early stage, because it's about learning so rapidly from the way that because no one has building this business before, no one else. It's no right way. It's the right way that you will find out that will be the solution.
And now that we're on the topic of taking risks, I can imagine that from a financial part, that's also something that really is tricky for a startup to know how to invest your money, and how cautious you should be, or how high risks you should take. And can you please tell us a bit about your view on that, the financial?
Absolutely, that's more like the fourth subject, that one of the biggest risks why startups fail is pretty obvious, but you dig down is they run out of cash. That's of course a big risk, and usually it starts with that because you don't have any cash. But in the beginning, maybe it's not that difficult, because then you might not even have the salary. You might work 20% the first year, but the risk of running out of cash is one of the biggest risks. That's why startups doesn't exist anymore. But on that thing, first of all, I think you need to be you need to have a view on the financial all the time. You need to do planning, forecasting, and so on before you need to take in investment. So exactly, you might actually need to, okay, I have a dream about starting a startup, and maybe you need to save vacation and need to take your savings that you're okay, because the first 6 months I need to achieve this. So it's about planning and actually finding financials to succeed, so you don't run out of cash. You can with the cash that you have and the resources that you have, that you can show the idea that it works. And then, but this thing get even more trickier, because run out of cash is not that simple. So if you get a lot of cash, then you have a solution on this, and that's something I see is also going to be a big problem. If you get too much cash, if you take too much on investment too early, you might raise, maybe you would need 2 million, but you're raising 20 because you think it's good to have. And then you don't need to, what's usually happen then, the burn rate, you're doing so much things at the same time without learning, and the burn rate for the company grows all the time. And then when the money is starting to getting less, then you have very, very difficult to change the way of the burn rate. You have so high burn rate, so to go up in burn rate is not that difficult, but going from a high burn rate to low, it happens things with the organization. People get a bit, maybe you need to let people go, you need to take away things, and that's the energy that you need to grow a company, to grow a startup. So maybe you shouldn't bring in more money than you need. And I also think that if you talk about the whole run after cash, you need to have a plan for the investment strategy. It's not about finding the first investment. Okay, now I have an idea, now I have a minimum viable product, I need to find 1 million, and then it's good. I think you need to look at the whole step, and that's what we're seeing. Because if you just bring in money with maybe a couple of persons, but you haven't done the DD on the investors. So a couple of persons that might think it's fantastic to invest in a startup, is cool, and they invest 100,000 each, and you're doing pretty good. And then after a year, you would like to have more money, or a half year, but those investors, they're not interested, and then they will come to a bigger investor, and that investor will ask, okay, how many of the older investors will invest? None, because they will do. Why not? It's because they have doing other stuff. But from an investor perspective, you get afraid then. Okay, the existing investor is not investing, but you want my money. You just realize we are people. If no one wants to buy that share, I don't buy it either. So you need to have a think about the whole plan. How much money can I bring in the first time? How long will it be to the next time? Okay, would those people be able to follow? Could they follow on that? Not everyone can do that. So it's like a puzzle. And of course, for an entrepreneur, you don't want to give away so much of your company. And that's why maybe evaluation goes up. You do a lot, your higher valuation, your less stocks you need to sell. But if the valuation goes up too rapidly before the business goes on the same way, you might be able to lower that, and that's also a big no-no for investors. That makes them a bit afraid of investment and so on. So the run after cash thing is not just a word, it's a strategy, it's a plan. Once again, have a think about that. Do DD on the investors, have a long-term scenario, even though that you start a company, think about the exit, I would say.
Nice. I just wanted to quickly mention again to the audience that if you have any questions, please feel free to write in the Q&A at the bottom of the screen. All right, great advice. And so now we discussed the product market, the team, the leadership, and the financing. Are there any other factors that you can think of that would cause a startup to fail?
Actually, it is the lack of persistence or the lack of grit. Grit is a great book. I haven't read it, but it's about. We started with that you need to understand it's very, very difficult to succeed with startups. That's the way of doing it, because you will do something unique, and that's fantastic, and that will change the world, and that will be the future job of our children, but it is difficult. So you need to have that in mind. Sometimes people are quitting too early. They give up too early, and that's not persistent. It's maybe it wasn't that fun, which I thought. No, okay. First of all, you have to think about, okay, why don't you having fun at work? Don't forget about that, but you need to have fun during the journey as well. It's not that just fun the day you're selling the company. You're living your dream. You're creating something unique. You're changing like the landscape. That's unique. So if you think about that, why you started the company every day, maybe the persistence go up and you have that energy. But we're seeing that sometimes we give up too early. And that's a big mistake, I would say. And because sometimes it's not the problem is not the financial, it's not the team, it's not the leadership, it's not the need of the market. The only problem is the market timing. So if you have persistence, maybe we shouldn't discuss it as an example, but maybe it's the pandemic going that everyone goes digital, or what's happening then? Or for example, if you take companies like Airbnb, for example, they didn't get any investors wanting to join on their case because it's very, very difficult. But then one investor said, okay, because what the reason that they turned them down, they said, I don't think people will rent out their own places. It doesn't sound like a good idea. But one investor said they have looked at the market and thought that it's very tough climate. There's a lot of people that don't have so much money. Right now, what can you do that you can bring a bit more money to the family? You can rent your house. The timing was right. And then they were investing. So that's with the persistent. If you are more persistent, if you continue years after years, the timing could come when you at least expect it. You will what's also happening that you will learn so much all the time from what you're doing, from your startup. And sometimes you might even come up with a quick, small fix on your business idea or your market need that will actually create traction. So for me, that's super crucial, and that you have when you go into working with a startup, don't think a couple of months, don't think a year. Think I will be entrepreneur the rest of my life. Then of course sometimes you need to quit, but start something new. So that's a big mistake, and make sure that the people around you have the same thoughts, that you can work with this a long time. But that's why I was saying it's not about having that in your mind. You need to make sure that period that you're working, even though that you don't earn money, it's tough. It's like giving you passion and having fun anyway. You don't have much salary. It's stress about every month. You're always worrying about customers, but still, you are working for yourself. You're creating something unique. You are changing the world. That's something that you need to have a thought about when you go up every morning.
Yeah, and like you said, it comes again with a passion, how crucial it is. And I'm just thinking, like you mentioned, with the persistency. But how do you know when it's the bad timing or when it's the idea itself? I mean, sometimes it's also important to know when to stop or when to quit and change direction or go for something else.
It's a very good question. I still think that if you are persistent enough, you will have time to go out. If you talk about if the product's right and so on, then you have the time to talk to a certain amount of customers. And if everyone says it's wrong, okay, learn from that and change them, because something is there. But if you have a thought about, you should have actually creating something that has a need on the market. That's what step number one. So that's to start with, and hopefully you might go through those 5 things, or have a good advisor or a professional organization like Lead, for example, that you can actually work with those things. Because if you just make sure that the basics are right, then I'm not worried about the persistence, because it's just to continue. You will learn from that, and you will having. But you can't just. What's usually happening is, I heard a seminar about that. It's like someone used Mike Tyson as a metaphor. As soon as you get a punch in your head, the whole strategy of the game disappears because you get punched in the head. It's more or less the same with a startup. If you have some failure or something that not goes the way, you might just lose traction of what you're supposed to do, and you're doing something else, so you get worried, and actually the belief on yourself is not there anymore, and I think that could damage your startup a lot.
All right. So now we've gone through these 5 factors that you see that are crucial for startups, and why some startups fail. I mean, like you said, 90% of the startups fail. Like, they seem very obvious, these factors, but obviously it's a tricky world, the startup world. So I just wanted to know.
And it should be tricky, because if it would be easy, it wasn't the same passion when you succeed. It wasn't to be the same heroes, the coolest companies in the world, and the feeling when you maybe you sell to the first customer, or you're creating your first MVP, you having your first customers. And even though I'm not an entrepreneur myself, but I worked with entrepreneurial companies, and I had that feeling every day that every customer that either buy something or renew something is a success. It's fantastic. 1 year ago, they didn't have this product. This product doesn't exist on the market, and now they're paying for it. It solves a problem. And for me, it's about go there and actually you're helping people. So I think that's very important to have in mind.
Yeah. So there are probably a lot of entrepreneurs in the audience listening to us right now. So do you have, actually, I think there just popped up a question we might look at. Yeah, here we have a question. In order to get initial investment interest, is it best to have a prototype already, or the idea and market research? What problem is being solved in order to get money to create the right prototype?
It's a good question. Before you're creating a prototype, I think if you divide it on one thing, if you're creating a startup, I think you need to know your market first, and you need to do that research. You might come up with just a thought, and you can actually try that like a PDF for a pitch deck on a customer. If you would have that, how would you see it? So you don't spend too much money or resources on creating something. But so if you're starting a startup, start with the idea and the market and maybe the problem that you're solving, then the passion, and have a think about that. But when you're going from that to actually bring to look at investors, I'll just talk for Almi Invest, but from our perspective, the case is stronger if you have a product or a minimum valuable and an MVP. That's something that are ready. That okay, you're having this. Someone might have tried it, or maybe you have even won your first customer. But if you you just have the MVP and you have this traction from the market. If we can see that, I think it's a stronger case, because if we give you some investment, then it's about finalize that product, maybe hire the first salespeople, or start market that product in some way, or getting out to the market. Then we can see the progress directly. If the progress isn't there, we are a bit afraid of investment. If we say, okay, I will take us 6 months to develop the product, then we will see what the customers are saying. From a investment perspective, the risk is too high. What will happen on those 6 months? We bring in a lot of money, and you haven't actually proven that the need is there. You haven't sold anything yet. So from idea to the first customer, if that could be as short as possible, it strengthens your case. And even better, if you're having already a customer, and if you don't can afford producing the product or solutions, you might have a commit from a customer that if we will have this product, we will buy this amount. Then it's a stronger case.
Nice. If you have any other questions, please feel free to write in the Q&A. And in the meanwhile, I'm thinking to all the entrepreneurs in the audience, do you have any specific advice that you would like to give them?
To the entrepreneurs in the audience?
Yes.
I think I've been pretty clear with that, but never forget about the belief in yourself and the idea that you're creating, because usually you might when you are an entrepreneur, you had that passion. Sometimes I've seen that passion disappear, or you're getting a bit worried, or you're sure about that, but you need to work with that, because that passion will make you change the world. That passion what will happen? People like to work for you. You're more likely to work for a startup with like 1/2 of the salary than a traditional company, because you like to work for an entrepreneur with the passion and the belief. And that's something I think is an advice I would like to give.
We have another question from the audience. Someone thinks it's interesting to know what return an investor is expecting in percentage.
Also very good question. It's actually a good question when you do, as I said, I think you should doing like the due diligence and ask questions to the investors. It's not about that. It's like all relationships. It's actually not a relationship. They need to know everything about the company, of course, and your thoughts and so on. But you also should know about the investor, and that's a very good question. How much do you expect this investment to be? How long time frame do you have on that? How much will you be involved in the company, and so on? And so it matches with your need. But I would say that if you go to a venture capital, some of the companies will at least have 5 to 10% X of the investment. So if you're investing 1 million, will at least have 5 million out of it. So and reason for that, and some companies would like to have more, like up to 10% or 20x. And then the reason for that is what we started about, because a lot of startups fail, and then the investors' money get zero. But some startups succeed rapidly, and then we need to have a good percentage of the investment. Yeah, so it really depends then. It depends. It's different strategy. It's like it's go back to your business idea. It's about the business idea from the venture capital. Ask them about it, what they expect, and think about, is this something that's realistic for you? Is it the same? Are you aligned in that? Because some companies would like to maybe grow very, very rapidly. Someone is very important to a best possible exit. Someone might not. For me, it's okay as an entrepreneur. For me, I'm very happy to. I would like to work with this thing for 20 years. Then you can't have an investor who would like to have an exit in 3 years. And some entrepreneurs are happy with double their investment, and someone times 100. So make sure that you are aligned, I would say. We have another question here that I'm sure that you are more than willing to answer. The person would like you to elaborate on the best organization of a sales department in a SaaS business model. Maybe even can recommend actually attended a podcast called SaaS Podden. That one of the shows was telling me Johan Krona that was interviewed about how I build a sales organization at Mynewsdesk. But I can answer pretty short. But for me, it's about sales. It's very similar to sports, I would say. First of all, it's about is a technique. You can train sales a lot, but you also will really need to want to be there. It's about passion. So that's why when I recruit salespeople, I don't like recruit competence. I recruit personality, or people that like love that can see the potential in the product and can present that in some way. It's pretty easy to actually train them on sales technique, which are extremely important, like how you position your product and how you close, how you can take the sales cycle from 12 months to 1 month, and how you can actually booking meetings. But that's pretty simple. There's a lot of good sales coaches, a lot of good literature about that. You can train the team and I think also you should do that, because one of my best advice is to give salespeople something more than just celebrating on winning customers. Of course, that's the most important thing, winning customers. But if you have long sales cycles, some salespeople, they just win customers maybe once every month or once every half year. If you have an enterprise product, they need to feel as every other people when they go home on Friday that they have learned something from the week. So that's why I'm training people. I give them more tasks than sales, maybe help them with customer success, working with existing customers, so they're feeling strong belief in the product and that they are happy at work, because people buy people first.
True. And I also, from what I heard, I listened to the SaaS podden too, that you let them try, that learning from doing, that quite quickly you let them try to get the first sale and talk to make the calls.
Exactly. Yeah, but that's a good advice, because sometimes if you're a bit uncertain, and some people a lot of people like to have control. You would like to sit there and know everything about the product for 1 week. You want to interview all the founders for next week. Then you will do the research for the 3rd week, and then we'll do something more the 5th week, and then you go out and do your first sales meeting. First of all, what could happen there, that the people that goes out on the meetings feels that I don't want to do this, or they're really bad at it. Then we have lost 5 weeks. But that's one thing. But the other thing is, all those things I think is important. You should interview the founders. You should understand the product. You should, of course, meet customers or be taught by the best salespeople. But if you have the experience about selling, the role that you have, if you have done it yourself, if you have been in a sales meeting, you try it out, then you can ask just so much better questions. Otherwise, the training doesn't give the same effect. Not even like 1% of the effect. That's why the best training is to do it, go out there and learn. But from that, ask someone else, go out and try again, ask the other question. So I think it's a lot of mistakes to not go out, and the same mistakes as a startup. If you haven't presented your product or solution for the market, you can do all the planning in the world. You never know.
Yeah, and again comes to persistency, and keep trying and keep asking different people. We have another question here. Most important measures to follow up with salespeople.
As I said, first of all, are they happy at work? That's why also, because it goes back to when's the best time to sell. It's exactly the same. It's directly after you have sold something, because then you're happy, you have so much energy. So that's actually an important KPI. Are they enjoying the way of work? If they do, and if they have a belief in the product, because that belief needs to be trained every week or every month, because if you haven't sold, the belief goes down. That's the most important metric, that you're happy and have a belief. Then, of course, it's a pretty clear KPIs. You need to be able to sell in the long term. Otherwise, don't. But for me, actually, the pipeline value is important. Because in the startups, you might not know how long sales cycle is. Would it be 1 week or 2 weeks or 12 months? Of course, I need to know how much they're selling. But if we have trained them a lot, so the pipeline value is actually how much pipeline have you built? And if you can see that the pipeline always growing, and if it's a good sales people that train in the same way, that pipeline will actually go into actual sales. So the value of the potential deals that are creating, and because sometimes it's not about the salespeople that decide if the client will sign in April or in December. They might be able to tweak that, but not. So the pipeline value, because if a customer accepts to have an offer sent, it's still a bit of need out there, and you have sent something, you have taken a couple of meetings, and the salesperson himself has said, yes, I think this person in the future will buy. So measure pipeline in an early stage, because that's easier to measure and giving better results than just the sales quota.
Nice. So now we got some great sales advice too here today. I don't see any more questions, but I want to thank you so much for joining us here today. I hope that the audience found it very interesting and useful. I did. And great hearing about all the different advice you have, the market need, the team, the leadership, financing, strategy, and of course, persistency and passion that are the cores from your point of view. So thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you, and thank all the audience for all the great questions. And you're very engaged. I like that. And as I said, this is not a research or like evidence-based things. It's about my experience, and I talked to a couple of people in the team. So, and if you would like to learn more, it's a great seminar on TED Talks about why startups fail, or great books, and it's the most trendy thing that comes up. So if you want like to read research, do that. So, but this is my experience, and hopefully maybe I can learn you a lot. And if we had time, I would like to hear more about all those entrepreneurs. But if you have a company out there that's looking for investment, then you know where to find me.
True. All right. Thank you so much. And this was actually the last Startup Talks before the summer. We will be back in September with another Startup Talks. So keep an eye on our social medias and our website lead.se, where we update all our upcoming events. And if you want to check out our previous Startup Talks, you can find them on our YouTube channel, lead.se, written out in one word, if you missed them. So again, Pär, thank you so much for joining us today, and thank you everyone for listening.